what it is, and welcome back to Saved by the Game. What it is. We are episode 3, right? Is this 3?
This is number 3.
Number 3.
1, 2, 3.
Number 3, Saved by the Game episode 3. Today, we are going to be talking about retro game collecting for beginners. So if you decided you want to collect retro games, we're going to give you our thoughts and tips on, some ways to get started and some pitfalls to avoid.
Hold on. Time out.
Okay.
What makes you an expert in collecting? I guess I should ask myself the same question. What makes me an expert in collecting?
Honestly, full disclosure, I'm not an expert, right? And honestly, the first tip I would give you is do what works for you. Like, we're just giving you our perspective. At the end of the day, don't let anybody tell you how to collect. We can give you advice. And if some of this stuff works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, it's perfectly fine too. At the end of the day, it's your experience. So do what works for you.
Okay. I mean,
I am no expert at all. I would not consider myself to be one.
You know what? But I'll say this. You may not consider yourself an expert, but you are well versed. You are well versed in the genre, good sir. Because for those of you that don't know, like this guy here has been collecting way longer than I. Now we've been playing video games all our lives, right?
Yeah.
All our lives for the most part since we were 4, right? We've been playing video games, but when you think about that, just because you've played, and this goes for many of you out there that are thinking about, I think I want to start a collection. You may have had games growing up, but that didn't mean you collected them. You had a handful of games, you played them, and now you've gotten to a point in your lives where you say, I want to have a vast library of games, and not just the games that, well, yes, the keystone of it is going to be the games that you grew up playing, but you want to add more to that. How do I get there? How do I start? What was it for you, Greg, that really got you kickstarted and said, I'm going to do this? Because I know you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm pretty sure there was numerous times in this journey that you wanted to give up. What was really the driving factor to really start collecting? What got you out of that beginner stage?
I think the thing that got me out of the beginner stage was just setting small goals for yourself, right? Set small goals for yourself, and then really just understand what your collecting goals are at the start, right? Now, obviously, they're going to change. They're not going to stay the same, right? My collection is way different than I ever intended it to be when I first started. But yeah, just setting small goals, right? If your goal is just to get the games that you played as a kid and stopped there, then that's easy, right? No problem to go do that. But if you have a big wider goal, right? My big wide goal was to get the entire. At first, it was get every NES game ever made, right? Well, then I was like, well, okay, after doing some research, which I highly recommend everyone do your research, I realized, wait a minute, this is not really going to be possible because there's stuff out there like Nintendo World Championships that are just not really feasible for someone like me. So then once I figured out, well, wait a minute, instead, why don't I go for just every game that was sold in a store? Right? A U.S. licensed retail game sold in a store. But even my goal ended up changing it after that once I learned about stadium events. I was like, okay. So now my goal is going to be all of these games minus this one. That goal is attainable, right? It's not that it's not going to be expensive, but it's attainable. And that's where I started with that goal. And then I broke that up into small sub goals that I could, reach that small sub goal and be happy about and celebrate. And those sub goals were all part of getting to that big goal, which I eventually got to just last year. So set small goals for yourself, because you're going to be frustrated and broke if you just run out and just buy every game you see, right? Because not all of us have disposable income, right? I mean, you may have disposable income, and if you do, why are you listening to us? Go buy games.
Just go buy it all.
Yeah. But setting those small goals will help it feel a lot less grindy for sure. And same to you, like what inspired you to collect, and what's kind of helped you stay the course over these past couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, this is it'd actually be 3 years in May
Mm-hmm.
for me, right? I've played video games for since I was 4, like I said before,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a good chunk of games on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, NES growing up. Through moves, some of those got stolen or lost and just gone, or mom got rid of them, whatever. You never know. Or when you get a little bit older, I was playing PlayStation, Xbox, and then the whole trade your video games in. So I was trading in bulks of games for a handful of new games, and you start losing. Your collection just dwindles down over time. So I kept a handful of games that I've had since I've, growing up. And I said, I'm never getting rid of these because they held sentimental value to me. Either there was a game that a friend gave me and I had a really strong bond with that person, or my mom bought them for me. Those are the games that I held on to. But 3 years ago, you and I had a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and I just kind of hit this crossroads because you had talked about this NES collection that you were going after, and it inspired me. And I'm like, man, that if there was ever a hobby that I would stick with, it's going to be the one that I actually do on a daily
Yeah.
basis. So why not invest my time into something that I know I'm not going to give up on? I have a huge passion for. That's really what really sparked my interest for it. I am by no means an expert. No means an expert, but I know through due diligence that I am no longer a beginner. That makes sense.
No, yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And one thing that I noticed about you is when you first started, even though you've only been collecting for 3 years, I mean, one, you've amassed a very impressive collection, especially on the Neo Geo side. But one thing that I thought was really interesting that you did, and you did really well, was you really did your research. Like almost every time we would talk about it, you would have some new thing that you had learned about like Neo Geo and about certain idiosyncrasies about Neo Geo games and the market for them and all kinds of different facts about certain games. And that's one thing that I would tell everybody at home is to just do your research. We said it in the beginning of the video, but really do your research on what it is you want to collect for. A, you're going to learn a lot more about the history of a lot of these games, and B, it will stop you from making any falling into any pitfalls. One big thing to research about whatever your collectible is going to be is how to spot counterfeits.
Oh,
Right, that's a big thing, right? It really
huge.
depends on where your lies, right? It's a lot harder to counterfeit, a GameCube game, right? You're not really going to see that, but for any like cartridge-based games, I would definitely do your research on how to spot counterfeits. There are tons of great YouTube content creators out there that have made great videos about it, as well as the website Price Charting, which is where a lot of people go to look at prices, will have actual pictures of what these games should look like on the inside. And to add to that, don't be afraid to open games. Get yourself a set of tools like look similar to this. You can buy them on Amazon for very cheap. And when buying games, don't be afraid to open them or ask them to be opened, um, because that's one of those things that will always help you validate whether or not a game is real. Is that board, right? But definitely do your research, and that's one thing that, like I said, that you've done a great job over the past 3 years is becoming extremely knowledgeable about the thing you're collecting. You got more knowledgeable at a much faster rate than I did, right? About what I'm collecting. So
I mean, it's. I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, it's the thing about it is when I talk to you about wanting to collect, the first assumption for those of you out there, was like, oh, he may go for a Super Nintendo set or a Sega Genesis or Xbox. Because I love Xbox. I love PlayStation. I love Sega Genesis. I love Nintendo, right? But there was one particular console that I always had my eye on. And he didn't even hear me talk about it before. Like, never. In all our years of gaming, never once did I bring up Neo Geo, just because it was just one of those consoles that was in the back of my head growing up. I always saw it in the back of a magazine. It was always intriguing and interesting. I always played a lot of the games because they were ported to Sega Genesis
Yeah.
and Super Nintendo. I still play those games today. And I was like, I wonder what it would be like to play the original version on the original console. And when I started doing my research, I spent a whole day validating which console I wanted to go after. I knew it wasn't going to be GameCube because everybody's talking about GameCube. Everybody's going after GameCube, and it's hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard going after a console that everybody is going after, right? Nintendo, everyone has not necessarily has the complete license set. To Greg's point, he has a full collection minus one game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely expensive, a little rare. It's a lot rarer to find. I mean, you can definitely find it, but you're going to be paying a heavy
It's gonna
price
be
for
some
it.
dollars. Yeah.
It's going to be some
Some
ducats,
ducats
some
for sure.
dukins, okay? Some heavy dollar bills. And I told him, I was like, hey, I'm going to collect Neo Geo. He's like, wait, what? You're going to collect what? Have you seen the prices of those? Now, to my fault, when I originally looked at prices, I was like, oh, yeah, I saw them on eBay. They're a couple $100. Yeah, that's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive, but I think I can do it. Man, mm-mm, mm-mm.
It's all, yeah.
When it's more, it's a lot more than that. And as a beginner, starting with such a niche console that's considered very high level in terms of the financial aspect of it, you're not going to find very many Neo games that are cheap. And if you do find them cheap, they're not complete, or they're not in really good shape, or they don't work. You're going to run into those scenarios. So for beginners out there, find something, the passionate console that you just love, love, love. Go after that if that's what you want to do. For me, you see everything else here. Well, Elliot, why did you go after this if you're collecting Neo Geo? Well, here's my tip to you. If you're able to do this, not everyone's able to do this, but if you are, I figured out really quick, really early on, after my first 3 or 4 games,
Yeah.
that I can't go out to just a retro store, a video game store, and just buy a Neo Geo game. Hell, a lot of people that you go and ask at these stores don't even know what Neo Geo is, unless you go to an experienced, tenured retro store that's been in the game for 15, 20 years, and they're still around. They know all about it. They'll probably laugh at in your face like, yo, what? Neo Geo?
Yeah.
Do you know what you're talking about? It's not that. So for me, what I did was, to weather the blow for these games, I was like, hey, I bought 1 or 2 games. I can afford that. But I can't afford to buy 5, 6, 7, 8 games every week for this console. I can't do that. That's not feasible. So I started doing the other route. I go to Goodwills, random bookstores, thrift stores, pawn shops. You have tons of YouTubers out here that do that. But I found games that I played growing up, and that really helped spark my collection overall in games, because everything else I was getting really cheap.
Yeah.
Because I was getting way below market value that you would purchase at a retro store, on eBay, a Facebook group, because the thrift stores were just like, hey, yeah, we got it in. Here, it's $2-3. That's affordable to me.
Mm.
That can mass a massive collection, and that can really get your kick started. So I know I've talked a lot, but that's generally how
that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to kind of diversify, right? Especially because most people have played more than just one game system growing up. Even if you're not going for a set of stuff, it's still fun to pick up a lot of those old games you remember playing, or discover new games on systems that maybe you've never played. And going for those like small like sub collections is also fun, right? Especially if the thing that you're collecting on is either you're maybe being priced out of it, or it's just slowing down as you're not able to find games as quickly or as easily as you were before, because you're either have a large amount of those games or they're just not readily available, in your case with like Neo Geo and things like that. So having
Yeah.
Having like a diverse kind of, I guess, like portfolio of things you want to collect is sometimes helpful, especially if you're the kind of person who likes to consistently get new things for your collection. Being able to like branch out and pick up other things is will definitely keep you motivated to keep going for sure. What do you think? How has social media helped you with in your journey? Would you say?
It's been tremendous.
Yeah,
Like and again, folks, this guy says he's not an expert, but he actually gave me the tip, and I ran with it.
you did.
I,
For
I
sure.
really did run with it. I really did. He was like, "Hey, if you're having issue finding certain games in your local area, hop in Facebook groups.
Hmm.
Um, you can meet a lot of really cool individuals who, one, maybe they're leaving the hobby for something else and they're ready to get rid of a collection, or you may find the occasional reseller that has duplicates and they just want to get rid of the extras. Build relationships with those people. I've been able to do that on the Neo Geo front.
Hmm.
And I mean, originally I was just buying them on eBay, right? And if there was a best offer, I really wasn't haggling because I was still new to the game. I was still new to collecting, so I didn't know about the haggling piece. And like, okay, that's the price, that's the market price for it. But no, that's not really it. You, that's part of the due diligence, is asking questions like, yeah, you see price charting, you see prices on eBay. Those are an average.
Hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean that is the direct price. So you have to take in a lot of different things into that aspect: the quality, completeness, the condition. You got to think of all those things when you're looking at it. For me, when I was reaching out to folks on Facebook, I actually met a Neo Geo seller through Instagram because there was a similar name on eBay, and come to find out that was his eBay name. So I messaged him on Instagram and was like, "Hey, is it? Do you sell on eBay?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, I saw this game that you had on eBay, and I'd be interested in purchasing it." So he's like, "Hey, dude, if you want to do direct sale, we can do that. That saves me on fees, the
Yeah,
eBay fees, and
oh, for sure.
there's a lot of sellers out there that would prefer not having to go through, you know, um, a eBay or a Macari, because they're paying hefty fees to those companies, and they have to pay tax, and they have to pay shipping, or you're
Hmm.
paying for shipping depending on what the item is. So if you can cut that down, you can get definitely a better price, and that's exactly what happened with that reseller for Neo Geo. And I've got other sellers that I deal with, but I've built a really phenomenal relationship with him over the last couple of years, and that's really helped me amass my collection.
No, that's for sure, and that's one thing I think if I had to go back and change, I would have gotten on social media. Well, I've been on social media for a long time, but it just never dawned on me to really like utilize it for retro game collecting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2018 when I finally started to put stuff out on social media. I just started a completely separate Instagram for just collecting, and what was interesting is people that I worked with and that I'd seen or that I talked to every day had no idea about any of this stuff. They're like, man, what? I have all these old games, man. I didn't know you collected this stuff. Like, I ended up buying a bunch of games from coworkers and friends because they never knew that I collected this stuff. So, and then to your point, I mean, just getting into Facebook groups, not only does it let you interface with people that you were able to like buy and sell games from, but just being around people that are like-minded and passionate about the same hobby, not just collecting, but even drilling down to collecting the specific thing that you're collecting, right? Like Neo Geo groups for him and NES groups for me. being able to converse with people that are passionate about the hobby is a lot of fun. You get ideas from people. Like the idea for my whole setup back here came from a Facebook group. I saw somebody else set up similar to this, and I was like, I love that. Where did you get those shelves? They're like, oh, it's these shelves right here. And I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, that's it. I gotta do that. It's really, really, really helpful. And I know that, there are people out there who feel some kind of way about social media. You are going to run into some trolls. There are some social media platforms that suck. I mean, really, Twitter makes me wish I had never learned how to read on like a weekly basis. So, you know what I mean? So I get it. But more often than not, it's going to be a good experience with social media for sure. So definitely utilize your social media. My favorite one is my favorite two, I think, are Instagram and TikTok, and then, well, I guess Facebook for the Facebook groups, but the ones that I post in the most are definitely Instagram and TikTok. So definitely utilize those. It will help you so much.
That's huge, man. It's huge. I haven't really branched out so much for any of the other consoles. It's really been, I've got a select few sellers that I've bought from over the last couple years, and they're trusted, right? Because they've been in the game, they've been selling for that particular console for years, right? So, folks have validated that the games are legit, inserts are legit, cartridges work, everything works. So, and mind you, I've opened Neo Geo carts, and Greg's talked about buying tools and opening carts. Well, if this isn't screwdrivers, right? You can't do that with Neo Geo games. Like, you got to have like freaking tools that you would use for a car to lift up the plastic panels, right? Like, some people say like, oh, you can get a metal or a credit card or whatever. No, I use very, very, very soft plastic lifting tools for my cartridges, because one, I don't want to leave any kind of impression marks into the plastic because it's real easy to do.
Yeah.
And you do that. And plus, the sticker, once you put a crease in there, you have damaged that sticker when it comes to, the hardcore collector that really wants it mint.
Yes.
You want it mint, you don't want to do that.
You can make a several $100 mistake if you're not careful, or sometimes several $1,000 mistake if you're not careful.
Even cleaning them.
Yes.
You can do that.
Yep, that is very, very, very true. One thing that, I kind of wanted to touch on is prices, right? Prices are a thing, and they are what they are. If you're getting into collecting now, you're getting into it at like the height of its popularity, at one of the heights of its popularity. Yeah. You started during the pandemic, which was kind of rough for all things video games, right?
It was rough.
And, there's not really much that we can tell you about prices. I mean, there's still deals out there, but the prices are going to fluctuate. And if you want to stay in the hobby long term, you kind of have to stay the course and just ride the wave. There was a lot of panic buying and panic selling and panic buying during the pandemic. People would buy. I panic bought some stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and snatch this now before the price goes up, because I was so scared of the price going up for certain things. But you're gonna have to stay the course, man. It's just what it is. And you know what? Even though I say that, if it gets to a point where, the prices of these games outweighs the pleasure you get of having them on your shelves, then walking away is fine. You know what I mean? Like, there's no shame in that at all.
You can't take it with you.
You can't. So
you can't.
It's yeah. It's just one of those things. You have to ride the wave. Another thing that I definitely recommend you do is, if you have local game stores, support them. For one, try to, maybe you can get it $5 cheaper on eBay, but if I would pay that extra $5 to $10 to support my local game store, because they get used to seeing your face, and you can start giving them your number and like, hey man, I collect these type of games. If you get something like this, give me a call, and I'll come in and look at it. They may not hold it for you. May still put it out in their case, but they'll let you know. And I mean, I've had Game Exchange do that for me. and that's a
That's awesome.
chain, right?
That's a
Like they
chain.
said, hey man,
That's good.
this came in, and just today at a game exchange, my wife got like $50 knocked off of a sealed GameCube game just because we come in there so much, and the manager knows
Damn.
us. Get in good
Wow.
with your local game store, build that relationship, support them. It's gonna be a beneficial relationship for you.
I
Um,
can I can definitely attest to that.
yeah,
There's three local retro stores that I go to. One for sure. Like I go to at least once a week, to where I've literally scheduled at least an hour and a half, if not two, being in the store, because yeah, I'm looking at games, but it's me and the owners talking the entire time about video games, talking about just what's been going on, and have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? And I've built relationships like that in some of these stores just because I go every week. And a lot of times, if I'm going every week, I'm probably seeing the same stuff that I saw last week, but I'm
mm-hmm.
still going to go because as a collector and as an early collector, give yourself a routine, right? If you have the time, like if you have dedicated time broken out in your daily life to say, this is the time that I'm going to go out and search for games, right? That's great. If you have a path of stores, locations that you want to go and hit, you may run into a scenario where you've been doing this for 3 months
Yeah,
and every location didn't have anything. And you're like, you know what? I'm tired of going here. They never have anything. I'm taking them off the list and I'm going to go somewhere else. And guess what happens? The day that you do that, someone else goes to that same location and you're in a Facebook group or they're on YouTube and they post. I'm like, hey, I know that location. When was this posted?
yeah,
I was just there a week ago. And they found a bunch of Grail games. Everything that you needed for your collection. I've made that mistake.
yeah.
I will never do that again. So the if you have a route, continue that route. Stay true to it. It's tough. It really is, because when it's dry out there and there's no games, there's a, to G's point, there is a fluctuation not just in price,
Yeah,
but in the availability of games that you're looking for.
very true. No, very true. But yeah, support your local game stores, man. We need them to stay in business because it helps
Have to.
further perpetuate this hobby that we all love.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I also recommend, if you get a chance, it's something that I got to do for the first time a few years ago. Me and you both, is go to a convention, man. Holy
That's
shit,
awesome.
conventions are
It's
fun.
an awesome
They're
experience.
so fun.
So fun.
Matter of fact, I think we should just do an episode about your first retro gaming convention and what it's like, because we could talk about
Dude,
that for a while. Like, that was a lot of fun, and I highly, highly, highly recommend going to one, even if it's a small one. Just go. You will have fun. I promise you will.
oh my god, there are do's and don'ts at conventions.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. Like oh my god,
yeah.
me and Greg go to our first convention. What was this? 2 years ago now.
2021. Yeah.
2021 Retropalooza
Yep.
in Arlington, Texas. Right. So I'm here in Texas. Greg and his wife come down, and they stay with me. We're like, hey, we got VIP passes. We're going to go all out. This is the first convention we've ever been to. It's all video games. We're going to find some great games. We get in this place, and there's vendor after vendor. There's folks selling anime stuff. There's folks selling, little trinkets and comic books and toys. And there's just an abundance of video games. And it's like a kid in a candy store, and you're running wild, and everybody's got the same idea you do. Let me get this before somebody else does. Now, the prices that you see are there. But if there was ever a time to haggle, me and this guy learned that at the tail end of our first Palooza, right? We learned late. Now, his wife, on the other hand, she's like, how much did you pay for that? I'm like, I paid $50. Why? so-and-so over here had it for 30. How? I talked him down to $30. Why didn't you? I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So learn to haggle, and then in the conventions, because it's going to be your first time, you're going to see a lot of awesome games. You're going to see games that you didn't even think you wanted in your collection. You're going to see just random stuff that you're like, I have to have that. Just impulse buying stuff. Take time to absorb the landscape. Walk around once. If it's there when you come back, it's meant to be. Now, before I let G have his moment to talk about this, I am going to also say that is a double-edged sword in itself.
It is, yeah.
Right? Doing the whole walk around and not buying anything right then and there, you could be potentially screwing yourself because someone comes up behind you and said, ooh, I've been looking for this and I need it. My last Palooza last year, literally, the second booth I had gone to in the morning had a sealed, brand spanking new Neo Geo Pocket. And he had it well underpriced. And because I was wearing Neo Geo gear, I had a shirt, I had a hat, I had a Neo Geo backpack. I was like, my first day at Palooza, and Greg will tell you this, like my very first day, it's been a tradition for the last 2 years. I always rock nothing but Neo Geo gear my very first day. And then I'm just in random gear the second day. I don't care because my feet hurt by the second day because I'm walking all the time. I was like, man, I'm going to come back. If it's still here, I'm going to pick it up. He's like, man, you sure? You're the Neo Geo King, man. You came here all rocking. This is meant for you. He's trying to sell me. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Come back. He's like, man, as soon as you left, I had to look at the prices. I marked it up $200. Sold just like that. I'm like, wow. He had it $200 cheaper when I talked to him. And then someone else came looking and talking about like, man, this is price really low. So he looked it up online and he's like, oh man, he marked it up. And then still sold it within 30 minutes of me walking away.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
That's unfortunate. But yeah, no, definitely attend a convention. Go to a convention. You'll learn a lot. Fun. It's so much fun to meet other people that are, passionate about these games, and it's a lot of fun. I would definitely highly recommend doing that for sure. What would you say if you had to go back and change anything about what you've done so far in your collecting journey? What would you change? What would you do differently as a beginner?
To be honest, know what you have. Like early on, the whole trading games thing. Even if you have games, like let's start from this. Let's start from this aspect. If you have a small portion of games that you're like, I don't want these in my collection, I'm just going to go ahead and sell them. Make sure you know what they're worth, because you could really be undercutting yourself. And I've done that numerous amount of times where I spent market value or above, and then I turned right back around a couple months later and sold it for pennies on the dollar, just because I wanted to get one particular item or two particular items. That's not good business for yourself financially, right? That's one huge thing I would say for, like, know what you're buying, know what the price is, do your due diligence on that, and really validate, is this something that I'm going to keep in my collection for a while? So when you're doing your impulse buying and you're like, this holds no value to me and all that, so sorry, my niece. She had to make sure she got in the podcast and said, hey. I woke up.
That's funny.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. It's all good though. Make sure that you're looking at it. And one other thing I would say is I went really hard in the paint early on. Like, and what I mean, the terminology, like, what is that slang for? Like, meaning I was extremely aggressive when I first started, like overly aggressive to the point where I'm like, oh snaps, I've spent a little too much money. And that can be a very bad thing. This is a very very cool and very addicting hobby,
It
especially if you're a
is.
gamer. And I'm not talking about it just from a Neo Geo aspect. I'm just talking about it in general. It is an extremely addicting hobby. Like this room that I'm in is my office. This is my work office, right? It just so happens to be sitting in a game room where originally was an empty wall with no shelves here, no arcades over here, no rug. There was a couch, a TV, and a desk, and there was a handful of games sitting in a Chester drawer right in front of me over here. That was it. I originally planned on making this a poker style game room, and things changed, and it morphed into this. So pace yourself, set,
Yeah.
prioritize what you want. Like I look at certain genres. Like I love martial arts. G will tell you I buy a lot of martial arts related games, ninja games, karate games. On NES, you'll see a lot of ninja, karate related stuff. Super Nintendo's the same way. I like that kind of stuff. That's what I prioritize myself on finding first in certain consoles, and in others, I look at other stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's really it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as human beings, we want that instant gratification. Like I want this now, 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 now. And I've caught myself doing it. If I see a bunch of people that I know posting all their new pickups, I'm like, I gotta go buy some games right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, do I
Mm-hmm.
really need to go buy some games? Like maybe I don't. You know what I mean? So I definitely understand that. And you have to go at a pace that just works for you. Whether it's
Yes.
faster or slower. Really, ultimately, through all these tips, like we said at the beginning, do what works for you. Some of the stuff we're saying may not work for you. Find the things that do. Above all else, if you don't listen to anything else we say, do what works best for you. Whatever gives you the most enjoyment out of this hobby is what you should do. These are just some things that we've kind of learned along the way that have helped both of us, kind of reach some of our collecting goals. And about collecting your collecting goals, man, celebrate your collecting goals, celebrate the wins. Going kind of back to social media, not only using it to look at other people's collections or to get ideas or to buy stuff, share your collection with people.
Yeah. We
Do
love seeing that.
don't worry about how if it's only 20 games. Do not worry about that. That's fine. We all start somewhere. I promise you that when you post your little small collection of 20 games, you're going to get a whole lot more love than you are going to get hate. Because by seeing that small collection, that's just another person that's entering the hobby that's going to help our hobby grow. And to me, that's awesome. So I love seeing people that are posting stuff saying, "I'm just starting out. Here's my 20 games." I'm like, yes, like that's awesome. Do that.
We got a new one.
Yeah, I got somebody else that's going to be able to share this awesome hobby that's passionate about these games. Um, Another thing too is for whatever you know console or whatever you like going for, look for YouTubers that are in that space. One person that I looked to for like what I looked at for like NES was John Riggs. Um,
Yep.
he has some awesome videos about here's a good way to get started on NES. Here's some really good games that are really cheap to start your collection. Find stuff like that, and look at some of those videos because you may find that some of the really good games that are fun to play that people recognize can be some of the cheaper ones, and you can really build a kind of a cool little collection for not thousands of dollars, and it may be worth it to start there for you. So
Yep.
definitely do that. Whatever your jam happens to be, find content creators that specialize in those things and start watching them. There are guys like I mentioned John Riggs for NES, but there's like John Hancock. He's got a huge collection and
Man,
he's
he's got a huge
always
collection of
sharing
everything.
tips, and like Metal
Yeah.
Jesus, those guys are
Yeah.
always sharing like really cool tips.
Yep.
But yeah, share your collection, man, and then just use YouTube and use all these platforms and follow some of these content creators. They'll give you a lot of great just individual niche tips for whatever you're trying to collect for.
Yeah, man. You hit it right on the nail. Like when I just need Neo Geo related content, or before I started the whole YouTube thing, it was looking for anyone that had content on Neo
Yeah.
Geo, because it's on YouTube. It's really scattered, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hit or miss. You may have people that posted Neo Geo stuff 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and they haven't posted anything since then, right? And I think a couple of folks that came to mind for me, Glenn the Gamer Goat. He's one, and he's had a massive Neo Geo collection for a long time. I followed him, in my early days of collecting. I love seeing, what new pickups he gets, um, limited editions. Who's in Switzerland?
It's a good one.
He's what I aspire my collection to be,
because
because this guy is going for a complete Japanese and English Neo Geo AES set, and he is very close to completing it. His collection is the most impressive video game collection I have ever seen, and it's just for one console. That's just the thing for beginners, for you guys out there. You don't have to go through all these numerous consoles. You don't have to collect for everything. You could collect for one console, and that'd be just fine. You could do it just like that.
Yep.
And also, I also want to say this too. When you're collecting, there's a lot of really helpful tools that you can use to track what you have.
Oh.
Inventory what you have.
Yes.
You just never know what could happen. And, just positive energy to everyone out there collecting. We never want anything negative to happen in your lives, or a situation where, one, your collection is stolen, or there's a fire, or there's a natural disaster, or anything like that. But inventory your collection. It doesn't matter if it's 10 games or it's 10,000 games. Inventory your collection, because you have to be able to know what you have. Not only just for that, but just for the simple matter is, like, when you're a beginner and you're early out, it's easy.
Yes.
But when you get to a level where you're like Greg and myself, where you've spent years accumulating games, and then you're still out there, and you still have the passion to hunt, you're going to run into a scenario where, like, do I have this game?
Oh.
And then you buy it, and like, I don't think I have it. And you get home, and I'm like, crap, I already had it. Well, I'm going to take this game back tomorrow. You just save yourself some time. There's plenty of great apps.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, price charting has you can use that on online too. I use it. Game Eye, and there's some other ones. I think Video Game Collector. There's some other ones too.
Yeah.
That are on your mobile apps that you can track. You can put in how much you paid for it, and that correlates with market pricing to see what the price of your collection. And also, this helps you too if you decide that, hey, this was a great hobby for a couple years, a couple months, and this isn't for me anymore, and I want to move into a different direction, and you want to sell it. Well, you have it already itemized through that collection. It saves you so much more time than having to go back, go through every single game and add it. That's just a headache for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great point. I mean, like you said, there's plenty of apps. I mean, I know people that just keep a Google Doc. If that whatever works for you, yeah, whatever works for you. I personally use an app called Retro Collector. I've used it for years, and I swear by it. It tracks every system. It even tracks Nintendo powers, and it also creates a link that I can share with people that takes them to their Pure Gaming Orbs website that shows my inventory and all my games. That way, if because I have friends that know I collect, and they have that link, and they can look and be like, "Hey, I found this game you don't have. You want me to pick this up for you?" Boom, it's easy. It saves them time of going, "Hey, you have this," like so on and so forth. But even so, you touched on if something happens to your games, one thing to think about as your collection grows is thinking about getting some insurance for it. I'm giving you this tip, and I still haven't done it yet, and I need to do it because my collection's gotten pretty large. So think about getting some insurance for it, because it would be terrible for you to lose thousands of dollars in collectibles that are very hard to replace. It's a little bit different with other current electronics, because they're in mass quantity and mass produced. But some of these, especially if you got some really rare things in your collection, you kind of want to insure those things so you can at least get some of the monetary value back if you're not able to replace it. Because that would just really stink if that were to happen. So definitely insure your stuff.
And to that point, I'm sure some folks have questions around that, and we're not experts in the insurance department,
I am not.
unfortunately. And I've heard, mixed review on, oh, you could, if you've got insurance through your home or your auto, and you could add or do an additional claim on this and that. A lot of these insurance companies will potentially, not always, give you like a bulk,
Yeah.
number for
Mm-hmm.
your collection. That may not hit the bill. If you have a collection that's much higher in the value department, they may recommend you actually going and getting those items appraised. Now, the problem with that is you've got so many different items in your collection that may not make sense. So, if anyone listening out there has a really good, video game related source for insuring video games, drop it in the comments, please,
Yeah,
because
definitely
we'd
let
love
us
to know
know.
too. Yeah,
Yeah, help to, give us some tips because
give us some tips. We're not high and mighty here.
Yeah.
We're in the mix with you guys too. So and
Yeah.
gals.
And yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I've that's the one thing that's kind of stopping me from getting insurance. Is I'm at the point where I have to get myself appraised, and I just haven't really gone through that process, so I don't really
Yeah.
know how to go about it. Like, there was a game store owner that mentioned that he appraises video games, but he's like a whole state away from me. So that kind of, yeah,
That's
that
a
kind
lot
of
of travel.
that's a lot of travel. So
Yeah.
definitely, as your collection grows, it is one thing that you definitely want to be thinking about. Keeping an inventory of it, so you, like you said, so you don't buy multiple copies of things when you don't mean to, and then, you know, God forbid anything ever happens, you can at least have it insured where you can recoup some of that cost back, even if you can't get the games back.
Yep.
One thing to think about, I know this is for beginners, but as your collection grows and say you're getting close to hitting your collecting goal, or say that you've reached it, you're going to have some mixed feelings, right? On the one hand, you're going to be happy, but on the other hand, you're going to have a weird feeling that the hunt is because the hunt's over. That will pass. That will pass in time. I promise you it will. Last year, when I finished this, I was happy, but at the same time, I was just like, it was the weirdest feeling. I was excited, but at the same time, I was sad. The sadness will pass. It will. I was sad because, the hunt was over. It was the anticipation of going into a new store and going, I wonder if they're going to have a game I need. And now I walk into a store and I don't even look at the NES games anymore because I don't need them.
Oh gosh,
That
that's
will
so.
pass. That will
It's so
pass.
crazy.
It will pass.
That's so crazy. I've asked you that question a couple of times. Like, what's next? What do you keep collecting, or are you just going after like little trinkets and stuff like that, little memorabilia? But oh man, because we've touched on this kind of in a different way on a previous episode, and your Grail game, you get your Grail game, and how do you feel? What's that feeling? But I mean, getting the complete collection, like hell for me, just Neo Geo. I don't want to put it out there. I want to be optimistic and say that I can reach the full goal, get a full licensed U.S. Neo Geo version, right? The collection for AES in my collection, but can I afford that?
And that's why you have to. Maybe you have to adjust that goal, right? Like I had to make that adjustment.
Exactly. You had to make the adjustment.
And I adjusted to a goal that I knew I would be happy with. Right? I knew that if I excluded other games like Little Samson and all that, I wouldn't be happy because while those games are expensive, they're not completely out of reach. Right? I knew I could exclude stadium events and still be okay with that goal. And that's another thing when you set your goal and set a goal that you'll be happy with. If it was one of those things where I knew that if I didn't have stadium events, I wouldn't be happy, I wouldn't have gone for this set. I would have just been like, I'll just collect stuff that I kind of like and I won't go for this set. But it was a goal that I was like, I can live with that. You know what? One game away. And what's funny is I'm not the only one who's had that idea. I just talked to a guy today who just finished it. His goal was the same as mine. licensed set minus stadium events.
Wow.
It's kind of its own sub thing now because it's just out of reach, man, for a lot of us. And really, stadium events and track and field are the same game, just a different label. So, yeah, it's
well, I mean that's a page out of the Neo Geo side because literally the AES US version and the Japanese version, the only thing that's different in the game is the paper.
Yeah.
The paper. That's it. The game is the exact same. It's region free. It doesn't matter what, if it's Japanese or European, or English console. It doesn't matter. Once you put the card in there, it's going to play for that region if it's based off of that region console. And what makes the price higher is a piece of paper and a sticker.
Yep.
That's it. And it's like, what? Pow. What is this? In your stadium events, you've created this. Well, I mean, I won't say you've created, but there is a group that has formed that you've got everything but stadium events. And I think I'm going to take a page out of your book. Unless I win a lottery or if I find it in some long lost garage sale or estate sale. Metal Slug 1 and probably 2. A couple other games that are high up there. The Ultimate 11 and Kazuna's Revenge, or not, no, Kazuna's Encounter, which is a fighting game. Those are some of the most rarest games to find in English legit. And I'll probably end up just grabbing a full MVS version, the arcade cart version instead. But I'm going to be optimistic right now.
Sure, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Future, yeah, I'm not looking for those games right now.
Yeah.
Like, I still have plenty of other titles to go after. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like I said, it's going to be optimistic about it, but also having that goal that, you know, you can still strive for, that's, you know, going to be good for you and still be acceptable to you will help you as well.
Yeah.
Outside of, so for people that are like looking to want to collect, but they don't really, they're not sure what to collect and they're maybe looking for ideas, what do you think are some cool things, some cool collections for beginners to do to try to start with?
You know, I think you and I both were doing our own little sub-series of collections, right?
We are.
So for me, outside of Neo Geo and some of the other stuff that I collect, I'm actually going for an original Xbox Platinum Hits collection.
Yep.
So they have to be complete. So complete and manual. They have to have the Platinum Hits discs, and a lot of times you'll see a mismatch. So you just have to make sure that you're doing that. And I think you're doing a PS1 Greatest Hits, right?
Absolutely, yeah. PS1 Greatest Hits. They're the green labels. You may be able to see some of them on my shelf over here. I don't know if you can, but it's a cool little small set. I actually got the idea from John Hancock, a YouTuber, which, you know...
And I got the idea from you
goes back to that,
and watched
right?
the video. Yeah.
Because doing it's a cool little subset. It's about 100 or so games. Not a lot of expensive games, but there's some really great titles in there. They're greatest hits for a reason. They're definitely really, really cool. One thing that I've started to do, and, you know, kind of another tip for you all is whatever you collect, it doesn't necessarily have to be retro. Like, I've been collecting a decent amount of Switch. I'm really starting to love that console, and a sub-genre of that is I've been collecting, like, limited run Switch stuff. It's reasonably priced. You can usually get it from their website for like $35. Best Buy sells them. They actually sell limited run games. So, and they display really nice. They have some really cool collector's editions. So, you know, the PS1 Greatest Hits as well as the Nintendo Switch are some pretty cool little collections that you can go for that won't break the bank. If you're like a set collector and you want to collect a whole set of something, N64 is not bad. It's about 220-ish games, so you're not looking at 700 or 800 games like you are with like NES and Super Nintendo. There are some things on the high end that are a little expensive, but you can make a pretty big dent in that collection without breaking the bank if you're just going for cards. Boxes are always going to be expensive, no matter what, right? Especially
doesn't matter which one it is.
Yeah, especially cartridge-based games that had cardboard boxes. Sega Genesis is not as bad because those cases are a lot more common because they're hard. But, you know, NES boxes, SNES boxes, you know, they're not as common as, like, say, Sega and things like that. So,
and and even to that point there too, for for those of you that want to be a completionist and you want to do a complete set, because the only complete set I'm going for is Neo Geo, and that's it's crazy and out of this world that may be. You know, all the other consoles that I have games for, I'm not doing a complete set for. Like the platinum hits is it. That's all I plan on. I'm not going to do a full PlayStation 2 or full OG Xbox or 360. I'm not going to do any of that. I pick up games that I really like that I know I'll play. If I have a retro week and I want to go through a couple of games, I'll do that. Pull them out, put them in the console, and do that. So I try to don't fall into the trap, because it's really easy to, when you start watching all these videos and listening to everything gaming and everything collecting, it gets really easy to fall into the trap to where you've just compiled numerous amounts of games and you're not playing any of them. They just become shelf candy for the most part. And yeah, a lot of these I would say are shelf candy, but I do prioritize my time to say, okay, yeah, I've consumed or I've consolidated or I've taken or purchased a numerous amount of game. Now it's time for me to take some time out to say, okay, let's take a break from going and searching, and let's take some time to actually play these games. Why is it important that I have this hobby right now?
Yeah.
Why is it important? What was the core reason behind collecting in the first place? Was to play the game.
Yep, that's a great point too. And one thing to add to that is, say maybe you have some games, but maybe you don't have like a console or you don't have like a CRT or something. Emulation is perfectly fine. I've actually lately been playing a lot more of my games on my Steam Deck. Even though I own them, I play them on my Steam Deck, or if I do play on original hardware, I'm using something like an EverDrive or something like that, right? Really play them however you can. Even if you don't put the physical cartridge in, play these games. Even if you don't own the game, you want to try it out, go emulate it. Nothing wrong with that. Don't let anybody ever tell you that you can't emulate games, because they ain't paying your bills. And
exactly,
I completely understand if you don't want to play $2,500 for a little Samsung cart. Because trust me, if I hadn't got it when I did, I wouldn't have paid $2,500 for it. Listen, I understand, right? Just because I decided to do it doesn't mean you have to. But you still want to play the game, and you should. It's a great game. It's a fantastic game.
It's a good game.
It's a really good game. But I understand if $2,500, that's a couple of mortgages, man. Like, I get it. So emulate.
That's a lot of McDoubles and Big Macs and all that good stuff.
The point is personally for me, the reason that I'm doing this is I'm passionate about these games and I want as many people to experience them as possible. If that means you have to emulate it, emulate it. If somebody gets on to you about emulation, ignore them.
We get it all the time.
Oh,
you can save so much money if you emulate. Okay, yeah.
Like I emulate too. Like I pretty much got a Steam Deck for that reason. It's my portable emulation machine. That's primarily what I use it for.
That's the convenience of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole convenience part. Like, maybe I don't want to sit here and hook up the console today. I'm not in the mood to do that and have the CRT popped on and generating a bunch of heat in the room and all that nonsense. Maybe I don't want to go through all that. Just click switch on, play. All right, I'm done for the day. Next.
Exactly.
I can do that. But then you go through the mode where you're like, you know what? I want the full nostalgia feel. I'm going to put the CRT up. I'm going to click it on and what console do I want to connect to it? You're going to have those too. So for those of you out there that say, man, y'all just wasting a bunch of money. Y'all just got this on there. Hey, that is your opinion. More power to you. Respect to you for you doing your PC thing and emulating or whatever version of the game that you want to do it on. Hey, as long as you're gaming, that's fine, because that's the sole purpose of it. As long as you're gaming, it shouldn't matter what the form factor is. It just so happens that our form factor that we love is the hardware.
Yeah.
The physical.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do play a lot of my games on physical hardware, but I emulate too, and I'm perfectly fine with it. I mean, honestly, I don't play a lot of these games, their actual physical card, because I would put wear and tear on them. And plus, it's getting to the point now where, like I think we said in episode 0, like, this is kind of the video game nerd version of a China cabinet. into the China. Your parents got that old China cabinet with the dishes in it that like nobody uses. They're just there for display. This is the nerd China cabinet right here.
This
Right?
is my mini museum. I am trying to preserve
Exactly.
these artifacts. These are artifacts. I'm trying to preserve these.
100%. So, I mean, that's one of the main reasons I emulate. Plus, like, there are games I have that I only have in box, and I want to drag it out of the box every time I want to play it. Like, I'm not doing that.
No, not damaging it.
I
No.
don't damage that box. So, it's play your way, man. Play your way. That's how I would say. However you want to play, play them.
I will say this, though. I don't test every game that I get. I will tell you that every single Neo Geo game I have ever bought has been played. Not tested, not just tested, has been played. I've beaten numerous Neo Geo games. Now, the ones that are super hard, I'm like, man, I gave it the old college try. I'll come back to that another day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that I can 100% say that I've played every single one of my Neo Geo games. Now, do I play them daily? No, because to your point, the wear and tear and pulling stuff out and insertion marks on Neo Geo cartridges is a real thing. And that's just by putting the cartridge into the console. Even if you're gentle with it, you're going to create insertion marks over time. And you really don't want that as a collector, especially if you're running into a scenario where we go back where we just had. You got to let go of the collection. You got to sell because something happened. You want to keep it as pristine as possible. So that's I play it on my MVSX a lot. But the other night, all the games that I just picked up over the last 2 weeks, I spent 4 hours up here. Neo Geo was hooked in. I was playing all those games. I played Windjammer. I won a couple of rounds of Windjammers. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. Oh my god. And dude, when I tell you, and I don't want to go on a tangent here because I know we're talking about beginners things, but this is what it is to be a collector, right? And for beginners out there that want to know why are we so passionate about this, because it's the game that does it. The games do that to you. They give you that feeling. When I put that game in, this was a brand new game to me. This is the first time having this game in my collection. And when I put the game in, and that little Neo Geo chime came on, and I'm like, oh, let's go, let's go. You got the little shimmy, you're ready to go. And the game pops on, I pick my character, and I'm throwing this flying disc across the way, and I win. And I'm like, dang, I got this on hard, and I won? Have I gotten this good at this game? Or is it a fluke? So I play the second game. I'm like, man, I'm really good at this game. And I didn't even realize I've been playing for like 45 minutes. Had no idea.
Yeah.
I was just so ingrained in the game. I had no idea that time had passed that long. And I was like, wait, I got to go play another game real quick. I'm still testing games out. But that is the passion behind collecting. As a new collector, as a beginner, it's almost like I'm almost envious of the new beginner collector, right? Because you don't have all of this, right? Yet, if that's what you're aspiring to get. You're getting a game that you haven't played in a while, or you're getting a game that you haven't played at all, but you've always wanted to play. And you finally get that opportunity, and the feeling that you get, that satisfaction that you have to be able to play the game that you've always wanted to play or always wanted to have, or you finally have it back. You have that. That's what one of the driving factors is to continue this hobby.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes 100% sense. I mean, and even for me, right? Like, even if I'm not playing these games, sometimes I don't even have to play these games just to take that trip down memory lane just by looking at them. Just looking at my shelves make me happy, right? And you'll find that too, right? That sometimes I'll go weeks, months without playing any retro games, but these shelves still make me happy. I'll like pull stuff out and look at it and be like, man, I remember playing this when I was a kid, or I remember reading about this in Nintendo Power. That's half the fun of it. It's just going down memory lane and having this kind of history of like video games, past and in some cases present, right? It's a great hobby, and I think that I think anybody getting into it will enjoy it, and that's really, I think, my final tip is, man, have fun. Have fun with this. It's fun. It's fun. You may not think it sounds fun, like what, buying old video games is fun? Yeah, kind of is.
It's fun.
It's fun. Especially when you have people to share it with, right? Like me and this guy all the time are always like, dude, I picked this up today. Dude, I picked this up today. Have you ever played this game
We were just
before?
on the phone today. We were on FaceTime half the day.
Yep.
He was buying games. He's like, man, they got games here. You want me to pick something up for you? Like, oh my God, they have that game? Yes, I need that.
It lets you share games back and forth. It also lets you, discover games you never knew about.
Many games.
There's several games, hidden gems on some of these old consoles that I didn't play till I was an adult. And I'm like, how did I ever miss this game? This game's incredible. So yeah. What is a game? One last thing we'll leave people with is, what is a game like that? Like, what is a game that you played now that you started collecting that you're like, oh my God, how did I never discover this game? It doesn't have to be one game. It could be a couple. I know there's probably several.
Oh my God, dude. You put me on the spot.
I'm sorry. My bad. I'm sorry.
Man. I'm not even going to pick Neo Geo because that's an insanely hard console for me to say I didn't even know about this game. A lot of them I knew about. You know what? No, I take that back. Viewpoint. Viewpoint is a shoot 'em up. It's a shoot 'em up game. It's on Neo Geo. The soundtrack is amazing. Like when the musical soundtrack for the game is so good, and I never knew about this game. I never knew it was a thing, and it was actually on Sega Genesis. I had no idea. I had Sega Genesis. Had no idea it was on Sega Genesis. I actually have the port of it. I actually found it last year at Palooza, the Viewpoint for Sega Genesis. So I have a copy of it, but the game plays so smooth. It's bright. It's vibrant. You've got all these other, ships and nonsense flying around, and it's just, the sprites are just bright and big, and the soundtrack just sucks you in. The very first level, the music it pops. And it drew me in. I was like, wow, if I had played this game growing up, I know for a fact this would have been one of the games me and my mom would have played together. That's how I thought about it.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I don't think I've actually ever played that one. You'll have to show it to me when we come down. I've never played that one. For me, there's been, since I've started this, there's been a lot that I've discovered that I didn't even realize I never played as a kid. One is an actual an SNK game, believe it or not, called Crystalis.
Oh yeah,
it is on NES, made by SNK. The people who are really big fans of it often say that it's better than Zelda. I don't know about all that, but it is it's a fantastic game. I actually discovered it when it came to the Nintendo Switch Online for their little NES service. I was just running through games and I just started playing it, and I was like, this game is incredible. There was and there's been several for like plenty of other consoles as well. This N64 game called Tetris Sphere.
Oh yeah,
that game's amazing, dude. This is awesome. How did I never play this as a kid?
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll find stuff like that, and that's part of the fun. Is finding these hidden gems that you never knew about. Like, how did I miss this game? This game's incredible. So, yeah.
So many good games. So many good games.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. I think we're gonna call it here because we could go on and on with this conversation. 4 or 5 hours. We definitely don't want to do that. So, man, we really appreciate everyone tuning in, and we've got more coming, for sure. So stay tuned. I think we may be doing a live.
We're gonna try. If I can get the kinks worked out of Twitch Live, we're gonna try it.
Yeah.
If there are any, like, share some hidden tips with us that you found in your collecting journey. What are your own tips? Or if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about or questions, you can
let us know.
Drop it in the comments.
Drop it in the comments.
You can tweet at me at ZeldaHatGuy. You can also tweet at Saved by the Game. and we'll respond back to you. Yeah, we love to get podcast ideas from you guys. So yeah,
We definitely appreciate you all tuning in. And again, Greg, where can they find you?
you can find me on all the socials at Zelda Head Guy.
And you can find me, Retro Neo Ness, on Instagram, and you can also find me at Retro Neo Ness, the YouTube channel. So appreciate you all tuning in.
We'll see you in the next one.
Later.